Hello everyone and welcome back to another weather update. Tonight I'll be quickly talking about some of the storms and just the general weather going across the continental U.S. Tonight, and then we'll also take a deeper dive into tomorrow's severe weather threat, and we'll also quickly look at Wednesday's severe weather threat as well. But first, let's start off with our convective outlook for today. So they have downgraded the risk from earlier, and now we just have a general thunderstorm risk mainly across parts of the mid-south, and then up into parts of the northeast, and then into southern Texas, and then into parts of the northwest United States. So quickly looking at some of the weather you might see tonight into tomorrow. So looking real quick right here, um, into late this evening into tonight, we just generally have some thunderstorms here, and maybe some thunderstorms, just to generally showers across parts of the mid-south, and then into Illinois, Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio, and into Michigan as well. You just have showers there. And then as you get into the next couple of hours, into the late nighttime hours, into early tomorrow, you do have some showers trying to develop over Alabama, Tennessee, Central Kentucky, and then into Ohio as well. And then you also do have some snow showers showing up on the 0ZHRRR in the northwest continental United States, and mainly over just the next couple of hours you do have some possible snow showers there, and then that chance will weaken a little bit into early tomorrow morning in the northwest. Now looking at our day 2 convective outlook for Tuesday, April the 30th, we have a slight risk in southern Minnesota all the way into about eastern Kansas, and then into eastern Nebraska and northwestern Missouri, and then into western Iowa there. We do also have a marginal risk all the way from Texas all the way into about central to southern Minnesota, and then into western Wisconsin as well. Looking at our tornado risk with this, we have a 5% risk for tomorrow in southern Minnesota all the way into about eastern Kansas, into eastern Nebraska, and then into about western Iowa and northwestern Missouri there as well. Then with our 2% risk, we have that risk from western Wisconsin into central to southern Minnesota, all the way into about the northern Oklahoma and southern Kansas border right there. Then looking at our wind risk, we do have a 15% and a hatch risk as well. The 15% risk here is from southern Minnesota all the way into about south central Kansas there. And then with our hatch risk, we do have that hatched from about northwestern Missouri into about northeastern Kansas, and then into eastern Nebraska, and then into about central to western Iowa there. Then looking at our hail risk, we do have a 15% risk for our hail risk with a hatch risk. The 15% is from about southern Minnesota all the way until about central Kansas, and then the hatch risk is about southwestern Minnesota all the way into about south central Kansas as well, into eastern Nebraska, and then into far western Iowa there as well. We also do have a 5% hail risk as well from western Wisconsin, and then into southern Minnesota all the way into about west central Texas. Now let's take a look at the storms possibly on Tuesday on the 0ZHRRR. So by Thursday morning, you do have some cells and maybe some weaker storms trying to move through Kansas, and then even into Nebraska. And then over the next couple of hours tomorrow morning, you still have some of those showers and storms moving through Iowa, and then into Minnesota, southern Minnesota as well. And then you do have a little bit of strengthening in some of those cells and storms over Iowa, and then into southern Minnesota as well. still going east as they move east, and then as you get into about early to mid evening, you still have these storms trying to get going and trying to strengthen over eastern South Dakota, and then into northwestern Iowa as well, and then into northeastern Nebraska as well. And then still going into later tomorrow evening, you do have quite a few cells and storms showing up over eastern Nebraska, and then into western Iowa as well as southern Minnesota. Still going into late tomorrow evening into tomorrow night, you still do have these very strong storms, mostly at the southern tip of this kind of jumbled up line. You do have some of the definitely some hail showing up possibly on some of these storms here, and then you even do have some isolated storms showing up trying to get going in northeastern Kansas there. Then going again, you have these cells really explode into eastern Kansas tomorrow late tomorrow evening into tomorrow night. I mean, you have these huge storms here really getting going and just exploding. This will be mainly for that hail threat too, and then even that wind threat as well, and that little bit of a tornado risk as well. And then still going into late tomorrow into the early nighttime hours, you have just mainly storms all the way from Iowa into Kansas, and they start to finally kind of move out of Iowa, and then but they do start to move into, I forgot to mention this, they do move into eastern Minnesota and then into western Wisconsin as well. And then you do have some storms showing up, stronger storms showing up in northern Missouri, and then into southern Kansas as well, and even to western Illinois there on the 0Z HRRR, and they finally start to weaken very late tomorrow night into early on Wednesday. Just from the 0Z HRRR, but we're going to compare the 3 kilometer NAM in a second as well and see what it shows. But still on the 0Z HRRR, it shows all the storms pretty much moving out, and then you do have some isolated storms showing up into mainly southeastern Kansas there, into northeastern Oklahoma as well. Now looking at the 3 kilometer NAM, it generally has the same idea, but it doesn't have as much of a quicker initiation with some of those storms, but they do form into more of a defined line instead of a jumbled up mess. But you do have some stronger storms moving into southern Minnesota and then into western Iowa there later tomorrow evening, and then still some isolated cells showing up into Kansas, just like the HRRR was showing. And then really generally the same idea. These storms explode, you could say, into Iowa, into Kansas tomorrow evening, into tomorrow night. And then maybe more of a wind threat kind of showing up on the NAM, as well as that tornado, a little bit of a tornado risk as well. And also with that hail risk, I mean, you just have these, the NAM showing some very intense storms there into Kansas. And then still going, they kind of fizzle out a lot quicker on the 3 kilometer NAM, but we'll have to watch that too just to see how long they can, how long their strength will be held up into the night. And really you just have these showers and storms, some storms and mainly showers moving into Wisconsin as well, and then into Minnesota as well, and then into Missouri and Iowa over the late evening into the nighttime hours tomorrow into Wednesday. Now we're going to take a look at the RAP model, or the RAP model, whichever you want to call it. And this is the 21Z Monday run. And we're looking at dew points here, surface dew points, but we do have that surge of moisture from that shortwave trough we were talking about. But you don't have a bunch of moisture in the midday hours tomorrow, but then that moisture is going to continue to surge, and you'll have definitely sufficient moisture for those storms. Lower 60s dew points showing up across eastern Nebraska there, and then into northwestern Iowa. Lower 60s dew point showing up there, and then you have this larger plume of moist air showing up into eastern Kansas, and then into eastern Oklahoma down here, and then into Missouri as well. And then as you go into the late evening hours, into the early nighttime hours, that moisture that was separated from this other moisture, as it's shown on the RAP model, kind of merges together, and you have more of a just a lot more moisture that connects, if that makes sense. And I mean, you have dew points into the upper 60s, so that's plenty of moisture for those storms that they for them to intensify for sure. But we're gonna have to watch that as well and see how much moisture gets transported north tomorrow into Wednesday. Now looking at temperatures on the 21Z RAP model, you do have definitely some pretty good heating, with temperatures into the upper 70s, into the mid 80s into eastern Kansas, where the storms are, and even into the lower 90s into parts of central Kansas. And then mainly we'll have to watch that those temperatures that get into the mid 80s into southeastern Nebraska, into western Iowa as well, into northwestern Missouri. And this will be tomorrow evening. And then as you get to later in the evening, you'll lose that daytime heating, and you'll have mainly temperatures in the mid 70s across Illinois, Missouri, eastern Kansas, and then to southeastern Nebraska, and into Iowa as well, into the mid 70s. And then you're not going to have as highest temperatures into southern Minnesota and then into Wisconsin, but you're going to still have temperatures in the highs into the mid and upper 60s showing up there on the 21Z RAP model. But still going into tomorrow evening, into late tomorrow evening, into tomorrow night, and then into Wednesday, you still have upper 60s temperatures showing up there, so still plenty of heating for those storms. And then you'll start to lose some of that heating, and those temperatures will stay into the mid and lower 60s across Illinois, and then into southeastern Iowa, and mainly across Missouri and Kansas there as well. Now looking at our mixed layer CAPE on the 21Z RAP model, by pretty much the late morning hours into about midday, you already have 1500 over 1500 joules per kilogram of mixed layer CAPE into eastern Nebraska, and then into eastern Kansas as well, and then into western Missouri, well over 1000 showing up there joules per kilogram. And then going into later in the evening, mid-evening, you have 2000 joules per kilogram of mixed layer CAPE there in western Iowa, over 2000 in eastern Nebraska, and then into Kansas, you have over 3000 joules per kilogram showing up there as well. And then still, as that instability you have strengthens, pretty much not strengthens, but as you have more instability, mainly into eastern Kansas, there are still well over 3000 joules per kilogram showing up there. But really, you're going to have to see if these storms, with the more instability to the southwest, you're going to have to see if those storms are able to pick up at that and develop. But as you can see here, showing up on the 21Z RAP, these will instability where you don't see any instability. Those are where those storms will be eating up at that. And then still going into very late on Tuesday into early on Wednesday, pretty much that instability is gone out of Iowa, and then into Nebraska and Wisconsin and Minnesota as well. Now looking at our low level winds, you're definitely going to have to watch this low level jet tomorrow, because you're going to have a pretty much a low level jet for most of the day, and you're going to have to watch this for that transport of moisture from the south, and also with those storms with that tornado risk as well. You do have ranges, lower level wind ranges into the upper 30 knot range, into the lower 40 knot range over western Iowa, eastern Nebraska, and eastern Kansas, into northwestern Missouri, into the mid 30 knot range midday tomorrow. And then going into tomorrow evening, that low level jet increases a little bit over Iowa, northwestern Missouri, into eastern Kansas there. Ranges into the lower 40 knot range there, and then still it will strengthen a little bit again into Iowa, and you have that mid 40 knot range showing up there, and then it'll keep increasing and increasing into later tomorrow night. And you're gonna have to watch this as well. Still, if you have some instability here, you're gonna have to watch it, and just mainly with any storms they get into this area, as well as that damaging wind threat too. But you have the lower 50 knot range showing up in eastern Iowa. In northern Missouri, you have the mid 40 knot range showing up there with our low level jet. So we're gonna have to watch this and see what it does tomorrow for sure. Now, finally, taking a very quick look at our severe weather threat on Wednesday, May the 1st, we do have a slight risk in southern Nebraska all the way into northern Texas, and then into western Oklahoma there. And then we also have a marginal risk from about central Nebraska into about central to southwestern Iowa, all the way down into southern Texas right there. Looking at our probabilistic, we have a 15% risk, as well as a hatch risk as well, and then a 5% risk surrounding that. So looking at the 18Z GFS from today, really your biggest thing that you're gonna have with Wednesday's severe weather threat is all that instability. I mean, you have well over 3,500 joules per kilogram of surface-based CAPE into Oklahoma and Kansas, and then into northern Texas. Even 4,000 joules per kilogram showing up there. But still, regardless of how much you have, you're still going to have plenty of instability on Wednesday for sure. Another major thing we're going to have to watch on Wednesday is that low-level jet, because you really get a with our shortwave trough for Wednesday, you're going to have that low-level jet beginning to ramp up into the later hours, on late nighttime hours on Wednesday into early on Thursday, and you're going to have to watch this with this instability. I mean, you have places of mainly the mid 40 knot range showing up there. I mean, at least 20 to 30 knots of 850 millibar winds into Oklahoma and Texas, and then into eastern Kansas there into the upper 30 knot range showing up. And then as you get later into Wednesday, that low level jet will begin to ramp up, and I mean, you have a pretty much widespread upper 30 knot to lower 40 knot range, and then even to the mid to upper 50 knot range into Kansas right here. So that's going to do it for tonight's update. I know I kind of didn't go super in depth with Wednesday's severe weather threat, but I will try to. If I do make a video tomorrow, I'll try my best, but it's just harder to focus on a threat that's a severe weather threat that's pretty much 2 days out, and anything really more than anything over about a day or two really is just kind of risky. Trying to do any forecasting with the short range weather models, that's why it's best to mainly use like the longer range weather models like the GFS stuff, or the European model if you're going kind of farther out, because the short range models kind of get risky and they just change a lot. just mainly over a couple of hours they can change a lot. But I really do appreciate all of y'all watching, and I know I've said this probably 100 times, but I'm still trying to improve on my forecasts. Not forecasts, but mainly updates, you could say. But I just I'm still learning a lot, definitely. But I know I'm not exactly perfect on my just my forecasting in general. But I think in yesterday's video I kept mixing up some states, and I apologize for that too. I don't know why I was mixing up there. Again, I do appreciate all of y'all watching, and I hope everyone has a great night.